Hello and welcome to the Final Straight F1 podcast with Ben and Tonda.
And today we're looking at the story of the 2024 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And Ben, we're really being treated. I mean, Baku, I feel like we got another banger of a race. Because what was that? I mean, of course, there are races that are more eventful with more overtakes. We didn't see that many, especially for the lead, let's say. But in terms of entertainment, suspense, stories, and, on-track moments, I feel like we got a lot to talk about today. Starting with Q1 already.
Yeah. Big drama. Big drama. And I don't know how you felt about it, but me seeing a McLaren in the danger zone. God, that's not safe, right? We know it's Baku. Anything can happen, so probably that's the place, I think, apart from Monaco, where you just want the time in immediately.
Yeah.
And they put Lando Norris on used tires. And what happened? Yellow flag, and he's out. God damn.
You know what they say, twice the pride, double the fall. You can build a rocket ship, but when you don't set the time, you are in for a bad time, as I say. And it really, we've been talking about so much. McLaren, in championship contention now are actually leading Constructors' Championship.
Mm-hmm.
But does it feel earned to you? Does it feel earned after... Well, on one hand, you have Oscar Piastri, who, after Monza, after overtaking his teammate, his now almost championship rival for second spot, but also, the title contender, second after Max Verstappen, after he overtook him, we heard something about papaya rules, and we also heard that there might be some changes coming. Just, notably something that would put Oscar Piastri in the position of a Bottas, so to speak, or a Perez.
Yeah.
Simply said, a second driver who is playing second fiddle and who's supporting his teammate. But first of all, I think it was Mark Webber who said, we talked about this last week, what kind of role is it that he's playing and all this, but because Oscar Piastri's contract didn't have anything about the possibility of him being told, do not fight. And after last week, we thought, what's going to happen next? And Oscar Piastri, on the weekend, when it mattered, when his teammate got knocked out on Q1, he delivered. And he won the Grand Prix after that incredible move on Leclerc into turn one, just fully sending it on the brake. I mean, and of course, it's not Piastri's first win, right? We saw that in Hungary, but it was kind of bittersweet, right? We all remember.
Exactly.
Lando Norris had to be begged to give him the position back, to give him the victory, basically. While
Multi-21.
Multi-21 papaya rules. Well, this was pure merit, pure skill, holding Leclerc off for
incredible
50 laps.
It was incredible.
50 laps.
Yeah.
It was. What did you think of Piastri?
Well, first of all, as you mentioned, right? Piastri, right there. He was P2 in qualifying, and he won the race. It's also probably a little bittersweet for McLaren, because for Lando Norris, it's what could have been kind of situation.
Yeah, exactly. And more points that he lost.
Yeah. Again, despite finishing actually ahead of Verstappen, which that's kind of crazy after starting, on the grid he started P15, right? Because Hamilton started from the pit lane and Gasly was disqualified. Interesting. Yeah, and he actually started P15 or P16. And I wouldn't expect him to finish ahead, because Red Bulls, again, they looked like they're back, which turned out to be a little bit of a over-exaggeration, to say the least, right? Because they struggled with the car, but someone was back, and we will get to that because your prediction was quite spot on.
My prediction, I said it last time. I have to start gambling.
Yeah.
Because after predicting that a Ferrari driver will win in Monza, after McLaren showed their incredible pace the race before, it happened. And last time I said Sergio Perez will score more points than Max Verstappen. Something that hasn't happened in
over 30 races.
33 races.
Yeah.
A bold prediction, to say the least. I didn't know that statistic when I said that. I didn't know there was 33 races. I probably wouldn't have said it if I knew it was 33 races. But Sergio Perez in Baku, he comes alive,
Yeah.
But sometimes he is a little too lively, as we saw at the end of the race, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
That
Perez,
was just
amazing. Yeah. The drive was amazing, and he was ahead of Verstappen the whole weekend, pretty much, which it's unheard of, It's crazy, to say the least.
And before we even get to the crash, because after the race, some Red Bull people started saying that, this trouble we have with the car can actually be traced back to the upgrades we brought to the 2023 Spanish Grand Prix.
Wow.
2023, the floor, something with the floor, a design choice that they made more than a year ago. And coincidentally, that was the race where Sergio Perez started struggling with the car.
Controversy.
I mean, if everything is true about this, if they actually just tailored the car to Verstappen or they didn't care because they were still winning while Perez was struggling. And we've all been very, say mean about Perez's performances in the past year, especially this year. And it's all because Red Bull just didn't care about it or about his feedback. Then it puts everything in a whole new context. I mean, remember Toto Wolff?
Yeah.
Remember Toto Wolff saying, "You change your car."
Yeah.
because Checo has been saying the car is fucked.
Yeah.
I have proof. He wasn't lying.
Yeah.
Possibly he wasn't lying.
Perhaps he's, we need to print it out and hang it in the Louvre at this point.
We need to print it out.
Yeah.
Imagine the scenes if now they brought the different, they changed the configuration and Sergio Perez actually starts performing on this level.
That would be
of course,
unreal.
Baku is one thing. Well, you never know.
Yeah, I mean, Christian Horner said it once, right? If the F1 calendar was made of 24 Bakus, Perez would be hard to beat. Probably as would Leclerc.
I mean, and Perez is the last out of the big four teams this season.
Yeah.
Not win a race. But honestly, he wasn't far off.
Yeah.
He wasn't far off. Baku.
I mean, exactly.
Because we saw Leclerc and Piastri, of course. And Ferrari, actually, we haven't mentioned Ferrari yet. Right?
Yeah, Ferrari, it was a surprise. I mean, to me, I always knew that the combination of Ferrari and Leclerc is going to be really good, especially in qualifying, because it was Charles Leclerc's fourth pole in a row in Baku in Ferrari 2021. Absolutely no right to be on pole because Verstappen and Hamilton had the superior car. But we've seen in Monaco in 2021 that Leclerc has put it on pole, well, with the consequence of not starting actually, but that's a whole another story. 2022 had the fastest car overall in Baku. Engine exploded while he was in the lead. 2023, I think the car had no right to be there as well. Verstappen and Red Bull. Perez actually last year, they were much faster. And this year it seemed like they had the edge in qualifying by quite a bit because, Leclerc was on pole by over 3/10, which is if you have a context of the past, at 10 or 80 races, Yep, it's a huge margin compared to all the last races, and he did crash in FP1,
yeah.
But the winless streak in Baku for Leclerc actually continues. And as you asked me about Piastri, right? Back to that, right? Piastri, amazing. He did an amazing job. He read the race brilliantly. Leclerc built up a lead, which was, I think, as high as 8.5 seconds.
I think it was 6 from one point.
It was, it was a lot. It was over 6 seconds. He was trying to be very gentle on the tires because he had cold tires. He was very gentle on the traction. And you suddenly just, he did a bit of an overcut, but he just wanted the tire delta for his second stint, right? He wanted them to last. Yeah. But he let the gap to close to almost a second. And then you could see that Oscar Piastri was in DRS, right? And it was the early stages of the second stint on hard tires where, we had the cool graphic with the arrow of Piastri just being closer and closer. And you're thinking, no way, nothing's going to happen, right? He's just going to try to prepare and nothing's going to happen. Oh my God, were we wrong? He absolutely sent it from the moon and he actually made it stick. He didn't even look up. A brilliant move and a huge mistake by Leclerc, in my opinion, which lost him the race.
Yeah, I mean, he said it after race in the post-race interviews that he just didn't defend the inside line. See that?
Yeah.
Whereas then, when Piastri was ahead of him, he was defending. He was covering him off. He was switching back and forth. And after turn 1 into turn 2, he was the other DRS zone. He was working his ass off.
He was driving like a number one driver.
And that you put it very nicely. And of course, there was another thing, and that was Perez, because Perez wasn't far back at all. He was within DRS behind Leclerc. And because of that, I feel like Leclerc got into a very tricky situation in that, as he said on the radio, he said either these guys are pushing like crazy or their grip is way better. Because as we saw in Monza, Leclerc, and in other races, of course, Leclerc is amazing when it comes to tire management. And
which wasn't always his strength, to be fair.
Yeah, wasn't. Yeah,
he's evolving really quite a bit.
As Piastri, like remember last year, he sometimes would get pole, but even from the beginning of this year in Austria, and so on. But so Leclerc is really good at managing his tires when it comes to it. When he has the lead, he can hold it. So, of course, he made a mistake, but then he was sandwiched between Piastri in front of him and Perez behind him. So, he probably would have maybe even liked to back off a little bit, nurse the tires, and then wait for Piastri's tires to get to wear down a little bit. But then with Perez right behind him, he couldn't afford to not push and to not stay within the DRS with that McLaren. So he was just stuck in dirty air. He had to try and attack, but also fend from Perez. And Perez fell off a bit, but Perez, it was kind of funny. He came in waves, sort of.
Yeah.
Every 10 laps, he would get closer, and he was actually like... And then, out of nowhere, Sainz was with them as well.
He caught up. He closed a huge gap. It was, I think... Okay, maybe Sainz had like an 8-second gap to Perez. Yeah. And it was interesting he caught up like reasonably within... Because you were wondering, right? At one point, there was for 20 laps or more, Leclerc was putting pressure on Piastri, who, he was hard to catch on the straight. And I think we found the reason why he was pretty quick on the straight, but we'll get to that as well. But, I mean, he was putting pressure on, and even I think Piastri's engineer was saying that the tires of Leclerc are actually in worse shape in terms of the rear tires and in better shape in the front. And you could see, you had the beautiful shot of both of the cars drifting in the penultimate corner.
It was such a cool shot as well.
Yeah, and you could see Leclerc in the cool-down room where you saw how he drifted, how Piastri drifted. He was just looking at it, and then he saw the shot of him behind drifting as well, and he was like, oh my God, This is where I should have put the
were.
traction on and just like bolted and caught him. But yeah, as you mentioned, Perez, he suddenly, Leclerc started to lose quite a bit of pace, and he had to look behind rather than in front. And then you were like, wow, is Leclerc even gonna be on the podium? Because you had Sainz, who clearly he had quite a bit of pace and he didn't ruin his tires behind the car, and Perez, who had better grip but lacked top speed,
had the pace.
So he held him off pretty well. But it was an interesting battle for the podium and to the last laps.
And unfortunately, it's not the first last lap crash that we've seen in Baku. But Carlos Sainz brilliantly overtook Sergio Perez and then went on to try a little move, a hint of a move on Charles Leclerc, his teammate. But then Perez and Sainz side by side, it's like two ships kind of drifted into each other, and it was just very pointless. It was.
Yeah.
I mean,
unfortunate is what I would have called it. Very unfortunate, and
because of course it wasn't. I mean, Perez was behind, so he could have. He saw more from behind, so he could have went to the left a bit, but it wasn't a big. Can't put the blame on either of them too much, I would say.
Perez and So Perez and Sainz crashing. Who do you think holds bigger blame?
Well, I'll admit I haven't seen the replays too much, but just from what I saw in the race, Sainz was ahead, right? And then they kind of just start inching towards each other, which both it can be prevented from both parties, but Perez is behind him, like he sees more of the car. So I would say slightly bit Perez. Are you disagree?
I would agree, and I'd say racing incident.
Yeah,
I would say similar situation to Monaco. Perez. Of course, Perez didn't. It was for a podium, so quite a bit more reason to fight than in Monaco. But Perez, because simply it's normal. A driver who is the leading car is trying to cover off the other car, going and trying to push him to the inside, right? I don't think Sainz was moving his steering wheel. He just turned in, held his line, which was heading to the left slightly, but Perez was holding his steering wheel like nothing else mattered in the world, and he didn't react to Sainz, which I think was the core problem. The contact was caused pretty much by Sainz moving over, but he had the right to, in my opinion. So I would say 60-40 Perez as well. But I think it's correct that the stewards didn't penalize any of the drivers.
No, I wouldn't.
Racing incident, in my opinion, because both could have done a bit more to avoid the contact. I would compare it a little bit to what happened in 2019 in Brazil with Leclerc and Vettel. With the both Ferraris, one Ferrari trying to cover the other one off and both making contact, like the little, like the slightest bit of contact, but ruined the whole race.
No, I mean, but it was really sad to see, especially for my prediction. I was already getting ready to be all cocky here, but now I can't because Perez, despite driving brilliantly, just didn't score more points than Verstappen. But this crash also led to one of the funniest things of the race, and that is George Russell being
How did he
podium.
end up on the podium? I don't think he even knew how the
It's
hell
just
he
like
got
in
there.
Austria. He just
yeah.
Whenever something happens on the track, George Russell is there to pick up the pieces.
But
sometimes he's unlucky, sometimes he's lucky. But he gets into situations like something always happens.
Something about him is there, but to be honest, props to him, right? He drove. I don't think he could have done anything more in that Mercedes. And also, one thing happened in the crash, right? It was the weird thing with the safety car, virtual safety car, yellow flags, because, I don't know, like when situations like this happen, it looked like a pretty big impact, right? and on the straight where you barely can see anything with the sun coming down, right? And you had the yellow flag for a bit, and it happened with Hamilton, Hülkenberg, and Behrman. Because Hülkenberg was leading, I think, both of them, right? And they passed the crash, or at least from what I understand, they passed the crash, a yellow flag. Hülkenberg, immediately just turned off, and he was like, right, this is done. This race is done, because there is a huge crash, a lot of carbon fiber, everything, like 2 cars destroyed, right? Little did he know that there was actually a green flag right after, and both Behrman and Hamilton overtook him, so he ended up outside the points barely, which is very unfortunate for the Hulk, but very fortunate for my prediction, which, looked like is gonna be a bit off, as I predicted, right, that Ollie Behrman will actually score points in a Haas. And it happened.
Yep, very impressive. The first driver to score points with 2 teams in his first 2 races.
A very niche statistic, but
a very niche statistic. In 20 years, at an F1 pub quiz, this one will get you a free beer. But both Behrman and Colapinto scored points.
Amazing drives by the 2 rookies.
Very exciting. Very exciting.
It was incredible. Even Hamilton himself was super happy, even after his very lackluster race, He struggled a lot with the car. He was on the radio saying, "Oh my God, do you see how I have to drive this thing?" But he was so impressed by Behrman and Colapinto. He forgot Colapinto's name, which is quite funny, because he said, "Oh, what's the guy's name in the Williams? Oh, shit, Colapinto." Okay. But he was very, very sportsmanlike, and he was like a good champion at that point. And let's be really fair to the both of them. In qualifying, they both beat their teammates. Because Logan Sargent in, 2 seasons, he didn't beat Albon a single time in a full qualifying session apart from the sprint shootout. And, Colapinto beat, Alex Albon, who is very quick. And he also scored points. Williams scored 10 points in this weekend.
Yeah.
Incredible.
That was, of course, helped by the 2 cars not finishing ahead of them.
Yeah.
But even so, I can only imagine it's very disheartening to be Logan Sargent right now when you see the guy who replaced you scored more points in 2 races than you've scored, in your whole career.
Yeah.
But that's just that's just data-driven James Vowles for you, and obviously the data showed him something correctly.
Well, where data failed him was probably the time needed to take out the coolant of the the fan from the engine, because in qualifying, a very weird moment happened in Q3, right, where Albon actually went out from the pit lane with the fan still stuck in the airbox of the car. He had to take it out himself because the rules don't allow for the marshals to touch the car pretty much or help you in any way. So he just had to throw it away, and then he had the ice, all over the cockpit, and quite an awkward situation. But still, both Williams being in Q3, which, in a track, I didn't expect them to do really well. And Ollie Behrman beating Nico Hülkenberg in qualifying is unheard of. I was very surprised. Very.
Makes me very excited for next season.
God, yeah.
To see Ollie Behrman in the Haas. Of course, if Haas manages to keep up with the upgrades and the new season. And but also Esteban Ocon. I keep forgetting that Esteban Ocon is the one accompanying him to go to Haas. Just a very, very random pairing, in my opinion, but that's just...
He's going to have a difficult class of how to beat your teammate and what can a teammate do to undermine you. That's going to be an interesting pairing, but it also puts a spotlight on these two, right? Colapinto doesn't have a seat for 2025, and
doesn't, no.
It seems like, after Baku, the speculation of him actually getting the second Sauber or Audi seat in 2025 is increasingly higher, and he's probably in competition only with Bottas.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you feel about the second seat, but geez, it just shows, even though Colapinto crashed, I think, or was it Behrman, or maybe both of them crashed in the weekend, right? It still shows how incredibly talented these guys are. And I feel like they deserve the seat in F1.
And I mean, with all due respect to Valtteri Bottas, I mean, you have to, you have to give the young F2 guys a chance at some point. And as much as I would love to see Bottas drive even more, I think he's a very good driver, and his talents are, quite frankly, going to waste at Kick Sauber in that neon green car.
A beautiful mustache.
But there's only 20. There's only 20 spots, and you have to give up space sometimes. Which is why it's also so sad to see all the trouble that Andretti going through to try and become the 11th team.
It's such a shame.
Grid. Because with 22 drivers, it'd be even more exciting. New faces, talents, new blood, and more excitement for the races and everything.
I mean, why not more teams, right? Because 20 seats, I mean, of course, arguably it has to be the best 20 drivers in the world who deserve the seat, which I still think it's not the case at this point. And there are a few drivers whom I would replace, and probably many of the people would replace, but we know for the reasons why they are there. And one of which teams, speaking about Aston Martin, I mean, I don't want to be
very subtle with it.
I don't want to be harsh, I think Stroll does belong to F1. I mean, he does have solid pace, and although this weekend didn't show it particularly, his judgment in the race is very interesting in terms of not leaving space, closing the door. But yeah, I mean, still, let's not be harsh on Stroll. I mean, he's no Latifi. I would still say that way. He's still, I think, won F2 title, which proves that he was able to beat many talented guys in equal machinery. But what I wanted to get on in Aston Martin was the news about Adrian Newey joining Aston Martin for 2025 onwards. And let me hear your thoughts about this pairing going onward, because as a Ferrari fan, you must feel quite disappointed.
Well, we've talked about this a bit before, right? Because there were rumors, but I mean, as disappointed as I can be, it makes sense. Because of course, we've heard that Adrian Newey, what he wanted was A, a lot of money, and B, a lot of control, which I fully understand why Ferrari would not want to give up complete control, because after all, they have their own engineer. They have some level of they have a tendency to stick to tradition, right? And sometimes that works in their favor, sometimes against. But the Aston Martin team, especially with Lawrence Stroll at the helm, is I think way more flexible in terms of both money and just being kind of bold in this and saying like, okay, let's throw money at this guy and give him complete control and see what happens. Because I genuinely believe that Lawrence Stroll will not stop at anything short but a title.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Especially for his son. But in this scenario, okay.
Very true, but I have seen many rumors where Aston Martin is doing anything they can to attract a certain Max Verstappen, and at this point, I don't see. I don't see the scenes. First of all, Alonso has a contract until what? The end of 2026 or 2027?
Yeah.
Which
he wants to drive as slow. He's gonna drive until he's like 50, this guy. I mean,
yeah, at least, easily. And third title for Alonso confirmed. I don't know. But,
the scenes.
Jeez, that would be insane. I mean, it's, at this point, I still can't believe it that it happened, but that they signed Newey. But imagine the scenario where you have two drivers in a car and there has been talks where where Lance Stroll would go to endurance championships for Aston Martin or somewhere else. But we've also heard rumors that Stroll will retire and go play tennis, which did not happen. But imagine the scenes where you have a team of Adrian Newey, Max Verstappen, and Fernando Alonso, and the funding of Aston Martin and Lawrence Stroll with the newest facilities. Oh my God, I'm afraid.
I feel like you would have to get at least one title out of that,
Yeah.
Regardless of everything else, of course, the competition is not easy. But I think that one of the only things that could stand in their way is that they get unlucky with the engine, and Honda doesn't deliver for the 2026 regulations. But I feel like if anything, that would be so on brand for Fernando Alonso. Imagine with his let's say career choices, which were a little unfortunate, let's say. Not always picking the best teams. I mean, he did choose quite well in Aston Martin. Like, he did so well at the start of last season.
Yeah.
So many podiums, almost won in Monaco. But I feel like it would be totally on brand for him to get Adrian Newey in a team, one of the best designers in the history of F1, and for it to all fall apart because of the engine.
Yeah, I mean, it could happen. Alonso doesn't have a great run with Honda, right? So
yeah.
But
he probably hears Honda and he shivers.
Yeah, still
he
in
sees
him.
Honda in his nightmares.
You say Honda, I say GP2. So it's kind of
exactly
a close relationship. But I want you to imagine this scenario. I might be a little crazy, but listen up. Adrian Newey joins Aston Martin 2025. Aston Martin becomes incredible in 2026. They nailed the regulations. The engine's good. Alonso wins the title in 2026. Retires.
20 years after his first.
Exactly.
His second. That's crazy.
Retires.
Yeah.
And then Max Verstappen comes in the seat. Wins in 2027. We have heard Max Verstappen saying that he doesn't care about staying long. He would prove he can win in a different team. He would beat Lance Stroll, but he would retire in 2027. And then Lawrence Stroll does the best, trick that has ever been.
I'm a bit scared now.
He hires Nicholas Latifi to drive alongside Lance Stroll in 2028. Lance Stroll wins his title, retires, and the rest will be history.
And then what? And then what?
Yeah, Latifi, no. Nothing about him. Nothing in the stars align him being a world champion, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I could see Verstappen coming in. I could see Lance Stroll learning from the best drivers, who would be Vettel, Alonso, Verstappen. Like, that would be a good CV to have. But
it's it's not too unrealistic, but to me as a Ferrari fan, it's quite
terrifying.
Frankly terrifying.
Yeah, rightly so. But we're getting too ahead of ourselves because
if I have to see Ferrari be P2 again with Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, I mean not even P2, P3, but whatever. It's but just to go back kind of to the start, Charles Leclerc is not that far behind Lando Norris in the standing. And Oscar Piastri is also not that far behind him. But I have to say, very impressive.
It is.
Remember the triple header? He didn't score points for 3 races in a row.
Imagine if he could score even just 8 points each of the races, which is 5th place.
Yeah.
God damn.
If Ferrari didn't make that, error with the what do we call it? This SF24 Evo.
Yeah. The upgrades.
Bouncing
the upgrades.
The bouncing. We could have had a whole different season.
Yeah, and I think that's the only. It's kind of I would say it's also the rise and the fall of this season. Like, at the same time, you have multiple winners. You didn't have Max Verstappen for 6 races on the podium, which if someone would have told me last year, I would have told you that he hurt himself and he's not racing, or I don't know. Yeah. But it's one of the things that's super exciting about, this season. You don't know who is it going to be. You don't know if Mercedes turns up with good setup and good tires and they're going to win. You don't know if McLaren is going to just continue their form, or if Ferrari pulls an ace on everyone, or if Red Bull gets their stuff together. But it's also the fall, because Verstappen is running away with the championship and the rest of the teams are just stealing points from each other.
Yeah. I mean, if the season started out like this...
Oh, God.
All-time banger, it would be one of the greatest seasons in the past... I don't know how long.
2025 is going to be insane. Yeah. Mark my words.
Let's hope that it stays like this. But I mean, Max Verstappen is really like running on momentum right now at this point. Like he's not winning. He's not on the podium. He just has to hope that his buffer of the 60 points that he has on Lando Norris will be enough for the rest of the season. And I mean, with the way that McLaren and Lando Norris have been doing past few races, that might just be the case.
Yeah,
but it's really like the position of Charles Leclerc in the standing, I feel like really shows his
it's super impressive. And Ferrari, in terms of constructors, are not far away from Red Bull as well.
No, not at all. So, I mean, if we see Red Bull fall into third, that would be something.
That would be... Imagine the scenes where Verstappen wins the Drivers' Championships and he's in the car
Red Bull
finished third in the constructors. Oh my God. That would be interesting. And Perez fell to 8th place in the Drivers' Championship, which is nuts. And oh my God, that's rough.
I mean, I feel like the fight for P2 will still be exciting because although McLaren have a rocket ship, Leclerc is still very, very fast, and Ferrari are bouncing back now with the upgrades. And I feel like Singapore, for one, will also be a very good track for them. So that will be very exciting. And I honestly have to say, I have been really enjoying the fights between Leclerc and Piastri. Because this wasn't the first race, right? This was like the 4th or 5th race of the season while those two were fighting, if not for the win, for the podium, right? We saw it even way back in Monaco. Piastri was the one chasing Leclerc down for the win. For the 2 uneventful hours, I personally was still at the edge of my seat because Piastri was never that far off. Then we saw it in Spa, right? Yeah. They had some good on-track battles. Then in Monza last week, and now here in Baku, and I really like the two of they're the pairing for the fights. Nothing against Lando Norris, but I feel like the championship fight between Leclerc and Piastri would also be very exciting because I feel like they're both very respectful drivers.
Yes,
both very mature, but the gloves come off on track. Although the driving is still, they give each other space, and the battles are exciting. So
I would agree on you, and I would double up. And I think that at this point of the season, I think sooner or later we need to make a video of how would the championship look like if Lando Norris would have utilized all his opportunities, and I would call it What If F1. That would be an interesting video series. But it's because we've been talking about a lot of things saying if Lando Norris wins every race, which is possible because McLaren is now the fastest car, and we've come to see that their front wings have come legal. They've been deemed legal, and apparently Ferrari and Red Bull have already the flexi front wings in the pipeline. But in Baku, we have discovered another interesting trick up McLaren's sleeve, which was I don't know what to call it, a mini DRS. They have a flexi front rear wing for a change. Interesting.
That is... I don't know what they're doing at the McLaren factory. They're just flexing all the material they can find on the car, trying to bend every surface as much as they can under pressure, and it's... But I saw the videos, and it's really, when you compare it to the Ferrari, for example, like that stays very stable, obviously, because it's the rear wing. And then you see the McLaren, it kind of rotates a bit, bends and twists.
Yeah, it creates a little hole.
I'm really curious to see if they find this legal. I mean,
it's interesting because it
definitely added some speed to the McLaren, which is why one of the reasons why Leclerc was struggling so much to get by Piastri, and it was like watching waiting to see a train crash that never comes, like because he would always be 6/10, 5/10 behind, and then especially with the live commentary, it was like, and here comes Leclerc. Oh no, he's too far off. And here comes Leclerc. Oh no, he's too far off.
Yeah, it seemed like
for 40 laps straight. I was always like, oh.
Yeah, it seemed like
it
seemed like he was always close, but geez, Piastri first of all defended amazingly.
I mean, it wouldn't be possible. Like even top speed and all, he can flex and he can twist all he wants, but without the defending, he would be cooked.
Oh yeah,
but
the rear wing did help Piastri win the GP. It seemed like there was a little gap created when when they were going top speed. Seemed like little two gaps. So sort of you have air coming through. Interesting innovation by McLaren. I'm very curious to see what Mr. Horner is gonna say about this in Singapore.
I wonder. I really wonder what Mr. Horner has been thinking all season. I would pay to be a fly on the wall in Red Bull's debriefs. As we talked about last week, the next season of Drive to Survive will hopefully.
Yeah, we have
a lot of these behind the scenes moments.
Yeah, we've got a lot to look forward to, like Drive to Survive, even the F1 movie, which we've been speaking about in Silverstone, and the season itself. It's gonna be very interesting because look, if Piastri, he's the top scorer for the past 7 races by far. And I feel like if he keeps this form, he could as well be a world champion next year if McLaren has a rocket ship again.
Yeah, I mean, imagine Piastri overtakes Norris in the champ before the end of the.
That would be impressive. Piastri world champion this year.
But imagine you're Lando Norris in that.
I'm worrying. Yeah, it's quite worrying, but yeah, I mean, I think this race, it's very hard to pick a driver of the day because we have had just very good drives. We have had incredible drives from the rookies. We have had an incredible drive from Alex Albon, who kept both Verstappen and Norris behind him in a Williams on old tires, which is also an incredible drive, a faultless drive. And
I feel like I feel like we have just like in Monza, we have our driver of the weekend from the midfield. Very much true. I mean, of course, Franco Colapinto and Alex Albon. The whole Williams team, the past 2 races, just doing amazing. I guess the new blood really did bring some new energy into the paddock, into the Williams garage. But for driver of the weekend, I mean, apart from Oscar Piastri's flexi wing, no, I mean, I have to say Piastri.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, he's like even if just for the move on Leclerc.
God, then, you cannot argue against him. You cannot argue against him because he's driving such a mature race.
I know it's very unlikely, but if Leclerc and Piastri just go the rest of the season switching P1 and P2, I wouldn't be mad. I would not be mad.
Well, they really none of them made severe mistakes. In their driving, they both defended. Oh, not Leclerc, but Leclerc defended incredibly well against Perez. Hard, but fair, in my opinion. But Piastri, geez. I mean, we need to stop talking about him because we're like fanboys.
this is starting to become the Oscar Piastri fan club. But
in fact, but
we are, dear viewers, we are not biased against Lando Norris. Yeah, we apologize to any Lando Norris diehard fans out there. But take it from us, a Mercedes and a Ferrari fan, we are not that biased. Or we are not biased at all.
Exactly.
But
you would choose then, as a driver of the weekend, I think it's clear we have chosen both Oscar Piastri, but then who would you choose as the midfield or the bottom field driver of the weekend for you?
Yeah, I mean, as we said, it has to be Alex Albon again. And we said Alex Albon and Franco Colapinto last week. And I feel like that could very well be the case again. The whole Williams team doing great. I mean, or Ollie Behrman. Ollie Behrman as well, just the rookies. Yeah. The rookies are
10 out of 10.
It's just the side.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, for me, I probably choose Franco Colapinto.
Yeah.
Because, to be fair, I think, qualifying might have been a little bit unfair in terms of Q3. But God, did he absolutely ruin Albon in Q2 by like 4/10, which is, I've never seen that since the Red Bull days of Alex Albon. But in the race, he actually was stopped very early. He had a contrast strategy to Albon. Albon started on the hards, Colapinto started on mediums, and he was boxed very early. So I think he was a little screwed by the strategy. But honestly, he just drove in an incredible race. He would have ended up in the points anyways, for it not being, for the two drivers not crashing.
And even, I mean, first Argentinian to score a point. What is?
Oh yeah,
80.
True, very true. And I mean, if he can do this in 2 races, what could he do in the next season with a full seat, full-time F1 seat? So I'd choose Colapinto, but yeah, I think there's no wrong answer in terms of what we've given so far. But in terms of our predictions, it would be good to get to your prediction, which was that Perez, the king of the streets, will be back. And absolutely, since FP1, I must say, you deserve the point, because he not only outqualified...
I should have said just outqualified. I said 30 more points, but if you give me the point, I'll gladly take it.
Yes, because
your prediction,
pace-wise, he was incredible.
Your prediction was very correct as well. I mean, we have been pretty solid with our prediction.
Yeah.
What is your prediction? What is your prediction for the next Grand Prix?
To be honest, it's Singapore. It's known to have quite a bit of safety cars, but we have expected Red Bull to be very bad for some reason. I mean, for obvious reasons. I don't think it's a made-up reason. And I have seen that Red Bull has actually been the fastest car in the slow speed turns in Baku. So it was an interesting one because they had a little bit of an upgrade. They kind of boxed in their rear diffuser because their rear diffuser was making pretty much too much downforce, sticking it to the ground and front wheels not biting. But it's another story. My prediction is that there will be 3 different teams on the podium because I think that there will be just quite a good match between McLaren, Ferrari, and I still